Welcome to Microsoft Excel Assignment 8 with Megan Reese. In this assignment, we are going to use some real-world applications in Excel. One of the main reasons most people use Excel in their homes is to figure out income and expenses and to figure out how they're going to spend their money. So we're going to put you in a situation as if you are an adult, probably in your late 20s, early 30s, and we're going to give you a situation. And so the first thing I want you to do on this assignment, after you've pulled it up, is to come down here to the green box and choose a number between 1 and 30. You can't change it. As soon as you type it in, that's the number that you are stuck with. So I'm going to go ahead and choose the number 15. You pick whichever number that you would like to pick. And remember, set in stone, that's what you have. Now, once you've done that, you're going to click on Sheet 2, and you'll see there are a whole bunch of different personalities or different life situations that you could be in. Find your number. And let me walk you through this. So it'll tell you what your occupation is and how much you make a year, how many years of school you had, how much debt you have in student loans, how much debt you have in credit cards, and then your spouse's occupation and their income. Some of you may not have a spouse, like this one's not married, or you may be divorced, or your spouse isn't working, okay? Then your number of children. So in my case, I have 5 kids. Dependents are 5. The dependents is how many people rely on you to support them. So if your spouse is working, they probably are not listed as one of your dependents. And then there's daycare, and it says 2 out of 5, which means that 2 out of my 5 children have all-day daycare. That's going to come into play later on. And my total income is $105,000. So just look at the one that you chose. Some are more simple, like number 4 is just they're not married and have no kids, and so it's a little more simple and straightforward. Once you know your total, you're going to start with your total income. So $105,000, you're going to go to yearly wage. Make sure you are including you and your spouse's income if you have a spouse. Then your number of dependents, and that is how your insurance is calculated. Now know that in the real world it's not this simple. Okay, it can be actually very complicated figuring out taxes, but this will at least give us an idea of how it is to be an adult with adult issues and adult finances. Then we enter in our student loans. So if you don't have a student loan, you can leave that out. Unfortunately, I have a lot of student loans. And then your credit cards. Now you'll notice that when you do that, a minimum is already entered here, and that's going to come into play when we get to our unfixed expenses. So that number should have already appeared. So now we have a pretty good idea that my net income is $66,000 a month. And that's after we've taken out taxes and insurance, okay? So the next thing we're going to do is go basically pick our life. I have $6,600 a month to spend, and we're going to open up this PowerPoint here, okay? And you're just going to basically go through it and choose your house, okay? Now yours may look different when you open yours up. It may be updated for where you live, but go through and choose the house that you would like to live in. Now, one thing you want to pay attention to is rent and mortgage, okay, and then the cost. The cost is what it is total, okay? That's good to know, but you don't really need to know that. It's just for interest's sake. What you really care about is rent or mortgage. Mortgage means that you're buying the house and that at the end of a certain period, you're going to own it. So it's always better, for the most part, to have a mortgage over rent, but you can decide. Maybe you just want to rent a house and call it good, okay? So I'm going to do the mortgage on this one and do $1,300, okay? The next thing it asks you to do is to go through your cars and choose your transportation. Now, if you're married, you have to choose a form of transportation for you and your spouse, okay? But make sure you're looking at the new or the used, and make sure you're also doing the monthly income, not the overall. So you're not going to pay $28,000 in 1 month for a Chevrolet. You're going to pay $550 a month. So let's say I do $550 for me and, $350 for the spouse. And as you're also looking at these, there's going to be some cheaper options in here. So you could just have a bike. Maybe you think you're going to live in New York and you just want a taxi, okay? Or maybe you're just going to take the bus everywhere. Same with the house. If you are really poor, you may have to live with your parents, okay? So that's in there as an option. But right now, don't worry too much about that. All right, so the transportation should already be there. So I had to fix that in mine, but yours it will be there. That this $900, whatever your total is, will come up automatically. And now you're ready for groceries. And when you come down into the groceries section, okay, it makes you actually figure it out per kid. So for me, I'm going to do budget because I've got 5 kids. So it's going to cost me $150 a month whether I'm married or not. And then I've got $50 per kid. So it's another $250 on top of that. So I'm going to go back in here and type $400 a month as my groceries, which really is pretty cheap, actually. That is definitely budget. All right, then you've got your utilities, and if you click on these little red things, it will tell you, what to do. So if you get stuck, it's there for you. So in utilities, it says pay 15% of your house payment. If you live at home, you don't have to put anything in there. So I'm going to right-click on here and do equals. Click on my housing, which is my B15, times 0.15. So now I pay $195 a month in utilities. And then there's my car insurance, which is 20% of my car payment. Make sure that you're doing both transportation. Okay, so equals my transportation times 0.20. Now there are a few exceptions. If you're using the bus, if you're using a bike, you're not going to have to worry about car insurance. Or if maybe you have a car but your spouse has a bike, which would be very rude of you, but if that's what your situation is, make sure you only figure it out for the car and not the total. All right, your gas is $100 per month per vehicle. Again, if you're taking the bus, you don't have to worry about that. And then to go through, I'm not going to go walk you through these next ones, but phone service, cable TV, and internet service, go ahead and figure that on your own. I'm actually going to have you pause for a moment and try to fill this out as best you can. So I went ahead and figured out my phone service, cable TV, and internet. Just go through the PowerPoint to find your answers there. Clothing. In the clothing section, so you want to decide if you want discount, casual, or professional. I've had kids that split it up. They're like, well, I need professional for work, so I'll do $75 for me, but then only $10 per kid. You can split it up that way. If you're the kind of person that wants to make sure your kids are always dressed, with really nice clothes from Gymboree or wherever, that's kind of up to you. So just figure out what that's going to be. And I have 5 kids, so I'm just going to do 50 plus 75 for me, which puts it at 125. You decide what you need for your household. And then we have daycare, and daycare is going to kill you. Okay, check sheet 2 to see how many of your kids need daycare, and it'll tell you 1 child, 2 children, 3 children, whatever. So in my scenario, I have 2 kids in daycare, so I need to pay $900. And yes, that's a lot, and that's pretty much the average. So yes, having children is expensive. Now charity is up to you. Personally, I like to figure it as 10%. So I click on my income and times it by 0.10, and that goes to charity. But if you can leave that blank if you want. If you're like, I'll give $50 a month, put something in there if you want to give to charity. So we've got the first side done. Here are my fixed expenses, and I make $6,600 a month. I have spent $5,000, and I still have $1,500 left over. Hopefully, you have money left over at this point. If you don't, you might want to already go back and make a couple of changes. Maybe you can't afford the Viper. Maybe you have to live with your parents. If you picked a household income that's very low, you're going to have to be a lot more careful with every dime you spend. So if you're already, in the negatives here, okay, which will look like, let me put a big number in here so you can see. That's still not enough. Okay, if you have it in negatives like that, it's got parentheses, then you're going to need to fix that. So now we're basically going to get our income and our expenses. So we're just going to equal, click on our income, equals, click on our expenses. That's just our fixed expenses right there, the $5,000, okay? We still haven't figured out our unfixed expenses, which I'll talk to you about in a second. But what I do need to know is how much money I have left over. But there is another thing thrown in that makes this number off, because I have $200 in my account already. So I'm going to do equals, click on the $200 plus my income. So I actually have $6,800, okay, minus my expenses. So I have $1,760 left, okay. So the student loans is required. No matter what, you have to pay this. This is the minimum balance, okay? So what I did for the student loan to figure that out, most time you have to pay a student loan off in 10 years. So I divided my student loan, which is quite substantial, by 10 years, and then divided by that by 12 payments each. So that's why my student loan is $583. Again, that would be different on a case-by-case basis, but gives us a pretty good idea. If you don't have a student loan, you don't have to worry about it. Then you have your credit cards, okay? So the minimum loan is $40 for me. Now, one little word about credit cards. If you pay the minimum balance on a credit card every month, you will basically never pay your credit card off. So if it's at all possible, I would at least pay at least double what it's telling you to pay, unless, of course, your credit card is really high. So you really want to pay more than just the minimum if you can. And then savings. It's optional, but you really want to try to at least put $100 in savings if you can. Okay, and then you have your entertainment, which is back over here. So these are all these entertainment options. And the difference between fixed and unfixed is that fixed expenses will always be there no matter what, you have to pay it. Unfixed can change every month. And especially with entertainment, that's kind of the budget usually cut if you're trying to save some money. But you still need to enter at least something in there because there's no way you're not going to have any entertainment options. Eating out, you know, it's very hard to go an entire month, especially as an adult, without going out to eat at least once, even if it's stopping at McDonald's. So you want to give yourself some sort of budget for eating out. If you want a video game system, if you want a computer, and then there's bigger things, a motorhome, sound system. If you'd like a pet, okay, $30 a month for pets. Transportation, if you'd like a horse, okay, there's a lot in there. Yearly vacations, if it's important to you to go on a local vacation or a high-end, you know, trip to Hawaii or something. So you need to go through and figure out what your expenses are. So I'm like, well, I'd like to go on, you know, a vacation every year. Oh, sorry, it's not going to be 2,000. Hold on. So $830 a month to save up for that big expensive vacation. And I would like to go out to eat. Don't think that's too much because you spend a lot more going out to eat than you realize when you're an adult. So by the time I'm done, I only have $6 left over. And technically that's okay. I've stayed positive. But you really want to try to plan your life so that you have something left over to spend because you realize this is all my bills. I haven't even started on just having spending money to pick something up at the store if I need it. So you might want to, you know, say, okay, I can't really afford that nice of a vacation, so maybe I'm going to go back down to the local one for $250 a month or something, you know. So just kind of keep that in mind. I would make it, the rule of thumb being that you have at least $400 left over when you're done. Some of you that are on the lower end, that might be very, very difficult to do, but do your best. But the number one thing is that this number needs to be positive. Now, the last thing we're going to do is create a graph for this. And I have already done this part for you, okay? Because if I try to highlight all of this stuff, it's also separated. Like if I can't really graph it very easily without graphing things I don't want. So I went ahead and set up, you'll notice that these are all formulas to get what I want out of it. And it will change. If you change it, it changes, as you can see. So we're just going to highlight that. We're going to go to Insert. And when you're thinking about what type of chart to do, one question you want to ask yourself is, if I add this all up, okay, does that equal the total that I'm graphing? And it does. I want to know where that $6,200 something went to. So we're going to do a pie chart for this because each of these are a piece of the pie. So I'm going to go to Insert, Pie Chart. Click on one of the pie charts that I like. Make sure you choose one that has a percentage on it. And then give it a title, which is Expense Report. And then, of course, you need to move it so that it fits on one page and doesn't cover up anything important, which can be a bit of a challenge. Hold on a minute. Okay, so there's my expense report. Make sure you've added a header to the page. So if you haven't done that already, put your header in or, you know, whatever, how you need to do that. And then when you're ready to print, make absolutely certain that this says page 1 of 1. Okay, it's already on a wide print. You don't have to change your landscape. And then you're ready to print it and turn it in. I hope you learned something from this assignment, that being in the real world and being an adult is more difficult than you might think. Take that with you as you go into the real world. Thanks for joining us.